Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, 10th canto, chapter 14, verse number 26. Ajñāna-saṁjñau bhava-bandha-mokṣau nāma nānyau staḥ ṛta-jña-bhāvāt ajasra-city ātmani kevale pare vicāryamāṇe taraṇāv ivāhanī. And once more with more enthusiasm, please. Ajñāna-saṁjñau bhava-bandha-mokṣau nāma nānyau staḥ ṛta-jña-bhāvāt ajasra-city ātmani kevale pare vicāryamāṇe taraṇāv ivāhanī. Ajñāna, manifesting from ignorance. Saṁjñau, which designations? Bhava-bandha, bondage to material existence. Moksha, and liberation. Dvau, the two. Nāma, indeed. Not. Anyau, separate. Staḥ, ṛta, true. Jña-bhāvāt, from knowledge. Ajasra-city, whose awareness is unimpeded. Ātmani, the spirit soul. Kevale, who is separated from matter. Pare, who is pure. Vicāryamāṇe, when he is properly distinguished. Taraṇau, within the sun. Eva, just as. Ahanī, day and night. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. The conception of material bondage and the conception of liberation are both manifestations of ignorance. Being outside the scope of true knowledge, they cease to exist when one correctly understands that the spirit soul is distinct from matter. This is very important. They cease to exist when one correctly understands that the pure spirit soul is distinct from matter and always fully conscious. At that time, bondage and liberation no longer have any significance, just as day and night have no significance from the perspective of the sun. Purport. I read this again, so that you really get it. The conception of material bondage and the conception of liberation are both manifestations of ignorance. Being outside the scope of true knowledge, they cease to exist when one correctly understands that the pure spirit soul is distinct from matter and always fully conscious. At that time, bondage and liberation no longer have any significance, just as day and night have no significance from the perspective of the sun. Yeah. Plug that in. But material bondage is illusion because a living entity actually has no real relationship with the material world. You see, even if you look at your body, actually the soul has no connection with the body, because we are not the body. It's our philosophy, we are soul. Then the question may be asked, if we have no connection with the body, how is it that I can scratch my head, for example, something so simple? How do I do that? I'm not the body, right? Why do I do that? Why do you scratch your head, or I scratch my ear right now? Because I experience a sensation, an unpleasant situation in my ear, or my nose, as a matter of fact. But we can realize a scratch on an itching sensation because we are conscious of the body. As the sun is illuminating the universe, so the soul is illuminating the body with knowledge. So we can understand any kind of pleasure, any kind of pain, although we are not the body, because of consciousness. Now the next step is how that I'm not the body can relieve myself of an itch. How do you do that? You're not the body. The only connection to the body is consciousness. Like I do this, how do you do that? The desire of the soul to relieve himself from any kind of unpleasant situation is understood by the super soul. Man proposes, God disposes. It's a simple sentence that everybody knows. Man proposes that yes, Prithu does in this body wants to scratch my collarbone, which is right now, I tell the truth and nothing but the truth, is right now itching. So the super soul understands that. The super soul goes to the telephone, calls the demigods. Hi Krishna, this is Krishna. Srila Bhagavan ki jai. Could you please move the hand of this boy, Prithu Das, that he can scratch his body? Yes, Bhagavan. And immediately the hand goes up and chup, 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 chup. It's all done by devas. It's all done by devas under the supreme control of Krishna within split seconds. And therefore we think we are the body, because it's happened in split seconds. You can scratch, you can do this, you can poke your nose, you can, so many things within split seconds. You are under this illusion that you're the doer. But you're not the doer, you desire. You desire that to do this or that, but you're not the doer. The ultimate doer is Krishna. He moves everyone. Ishvara sarva bhutanam hrideshe arjuna tishtati. He is Supreme Lord, is in the heart of everyone. Supreme Controller, Ishvara sarva bhutanam hrideshe arjuna tishtati. Then it comes Brahmayan sarva bhutani. And if you look at the Bhagavad, it's in Sanskrit, Brahmayan means he moves everyone. You cannot see anything without Krishna, you cannot touch anything without Krishna, you cannot smell anything without Krishna, you cannot hear anything without Krishna, you cannot taste anything without Krishna. Nothing. It's not in our capacity. With Krishna's help, we do so many things. Therefore, he is the ultimate doer. In Bhagavatam it says there are many causes, high and low, but he is the ultimate doer. That's the point to understand. He's the ultimate doer. So therefore our whole conception about ourselves is false. As soon as you not live as a soul, you live a lie, actually. The whole world is living a lie. That I'm this body, and therefore I can do what I like. But actually this is total illusion. He moves everyone according to our desire, nitya-nityananam, cetana-cetananam. He fulfills the desire of all living entities, good or bad. If you want to kill somebody, Krishna will arrange. He will find somebody who needs to be killed. And so you will be the instrument in the hand of God. That's why when suffering happens, somebody does something to us, we should not be upset with the person. We should understand that person is just the instrument of our own karma. That doesn't mean he's free. He will get his rap also, but that is in another court. It's not in your court. So, therefore, the simple thing is, if you want to forgive somebody, There are two ways. Sentimental forgiveness, okay, I forgive you, but then it comes back. Sometimes you forgive, sometimes you don't forgive, because on the platform of the mind who is flickering, right? The only way to forgive is actually in depth, if you have knowledge. And that knowledge is that this cannot happen to me unless I actually am the cause of it. That's the first step. Next step is I have to take full responsibility for it. If you take full responsibility for what somebody else does to you, that means the man is free. You can forgive. Because you already took upon yourself the deed as being your own doing. In a roundabout way, he's giving you the reactions. So forgiveness is only possible if you have knowledge. There's forgiveness in knowledge and there's forgiveness in ignorance. We have to forgive because after all, Jesus said so, and let's forgive, otherwise, there's some mundane logic to it. There's some morality to it, to forgive. But it's not deep, radical forgiveness. Radical forgiveness means that we have knowledge and we accept whatever somebody does to us as our own, the result to our own action. Somebody may come, you build something and somebody comes to destroy it. I've been in this situation many times in ISKCON. You build up a temple and then somebody comes and says, all right, thank you very much, you should do Gunan Sankirtan. And the whole temple deteriorates. I've seen that. So we should understand whatever happens to us is never between me and them. Never. In the ultimate analysis, it's only between you and Krishna. It has always been like that, it will always be like that, and it is always like that. So this we have to understand, a very deep understanding of karma, not some superficial. We have to understand there's always somebody of us. I was just talking with one devotee, and we had this subject matter, because he talked about somebody else and I talked about somebody else without going into the details, but that's what it's all about. You can not deeply forgive a person if you don't accept the responsibility for it. If you did something wrong and you realize it, that I'm such a fool, you won't blame another person anymore. You can actually forgive him very easily and say, that's just my own doing. He's just an instrument. It's never been me and him. Whatever happened to me, even if it's gross unhappiness, it's only between me and God. You see, I give you an example. In the concentration camp in Germany, in Dachau, I'm coming from Germany, so I'm deeply connected to that culture and to suffering in the concentration camps, because my father was in a concentration camp and he suffered like a dog. And so there was, in the concentration camp, the rabbis, the Jewish rabbis, sat together and made a court case against God. Why are we suffering? Where's the justice? Somebody has everything, somebody has nothing, somebody suffers, somebody doesn't suffer, somebody is thin, somebody is fat, somebody is beautiful, somebody is ugly, somebody is intelligent, somebody is dumb. And all they start at the beginning of their life is the same clean slate. Not true. Not true. Not true. If they were able to cross the threshold between birth and death, they could clearly see why. Everybody could clearly see why. Why is this happening to me? Prabhupada said, if you point a finger on somebody, you did this to me. Prabhupada said, 3 fingers point to you. That's Prabhupada's simple example. 3 fingers point to you. So these people in the concentration camp, Jewish people, 6 million people were killed. Horrific suffering. You cannot even imagine. I've read a lot of it. And so the rabbis came to the conclusion ultimately that God is guilty. Because they couldn't understand how all this can happen in the presence of a divine, all-pervading being. How is that possible? God must be partial. You may say that if you have no knowledge. If you have knowledge, samoham sarvabhuteshu name dveshyoti priya. I'm not partial, I'm equal to all. Krishna says. How can God be partial? So I'm telling you this story because it's quite insightful. One of the persons who was present was a person who became very famous. He became the prosecutor at a later stage. And his name was Wiesel. He got a Nobel Prize for Peace at one stage. And he understood there's something wrong with his conclusion. So he wrote another, a drama set in the 16th century, where the same thing happened. Jewish people were harassed and killed in the 16th century in Germany and all over Europe. So he put this same situation into this historical context of the 16th century pogroms. It's called pogroms. And the Jewish rabbis came together in a court case against God. And they came to the conclusion God is innocent. Why is that? Well, their conclusion is either God knows everything, but he has no power to do anything. Or he has a power to do anything, but he doesn't know what's going on here. You see, but from our understanding, Krishna is omnipresent, he's omnipotent, and he's omniscient. He knows everything. He's behind everything. In fact, he's a person who actually administers karmic reactions. Karma devanetana, under my supervision. We have to understand this truth. It's Krishna himself who, with his assistants, ultimately Yamaraj, judges people. So they came to the conclusion that God is either full of knowledge, but he has no power, or God is ignorant about what's going on and he can't do anything about it. So, you understand? Very simple. They say God is omnipresent, or omniscient, but he has no power to change our situation. Or he has a power, but he doesn't know what's going on. So the truth is that God is omniscient, omnipotent, and omnipowerful. He knows everything. He's at the root cause of our suffering. Actually, we are ourselves, by our foolishness. But you tell this to somebody who's living in a concentration camp. Very few people are that insightful or that able to open up to see their own deficiencies that brought them there from a previous existence. What is it? Violence breeds violence. Violence breeds violence. If you commit violence, it comes back to you in due course of time. If you kill animals, for example, Tolstoy said, as long as there are slaughterhouses, there will be war fields. You see, these are the reactions. People suffer in wars horrifically. I know from being born in that generation what happened in Germany, not just in the concentration camp. People in Zenli, they were incinerated by the bombs that were raining from the sky. Incinerated. So the suffering of the world, you can go as long back in history as you wish. The suffering of the world always has been there. From the beginning, there's suffering. Janma mritu vrta jadi dukkha dosha nudasanam. From the beginning. And if you don't want to learn by hearing, my father used to say, if you want to hear, then you have to suffer. You have to learn by bad experience. And so that's what this whole material world is about, learning by bad experience. If you turn to Bhagavad-Gita, very clearly everything is explained. You don't have to wonder whether God is omniscient or whether God is omnipotent or whether he's at the same time all knowledgeable. You don't have to worry about it because everything is explained. You need knowledge. So if there is no knowledge, then people cannot understand why the innocent suffer. They cannot understand. We understand that no one in this world is innocent, not even a child. Not even a child. I was in a situation personally that when my brother died of cancer, he died a very horrific death. He had to operate 4 times, they took a piece out of his brain, and it was such a suffering from 3 years old to 7. Then he died, and we were happy because it was for us unbearable to see it any longer. And so I was 10. I asked the priest, Father, He stood there. My brother's body lies here. Priest at the feet, I'm at the head. 10 years old. I said to the priest, Father, why? Why does God allow this? What has he done? The priest said, he has not done anything. I said, then why is he suffering? Where's the justice? Why don't you answer my question? And he said, I don't know what to say about that. I don't know. And within myself, I realized at that moment that there is no God. That everything is just chance. You see, if you have no knowledge, and you see somebody has everything, somebody has nothing, you come to the conclusion there's no God. It's just random, by accident. And I became an atheist, actually, in a very old age, young age. And only later, when I read a book about Buddha, I was attracted always to some sort of religiosity, so I understood that as much as people suffer the results of this life in their future life, and Christians or Muslims or Jews have no problems with that. They say, well, that's the justice of God. Once you say there's only one life, you cannot understand why people suffer. Once you have no knowledge of the soul, you cannot. And so people in Western countries, in Western religiosity, it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's Jewish or Christian or Muslim, there's no defined knowledge of the soul. They all believe the soul is born at the time of conception, the soul is born. That's not what Krishna says in Bhagavad-Gita. For the soul there's never birth nor death, having once been will he ever cease to be. That's what knowledge is. Never was a time that I did not exist, nor you, nor all these people. Nor will there be a time that we will cease to be. That's knowledge. And when one is enlightened with the knowledge by which darkness is destroyed, then this knowledge reveals everything. Just like the sun is lighting up everything in the daytime. That's the Bhagavad-Gita version. So people don't have knowledge, that's their problem. Even the priests couldn't understand. There was a horrible accident in Japan recently. This Fukushima reactor blew up. And there was a conference, and one little girl asked the Pope of Rome. She said, Father, why is that all my friends are dead? Where's God? My same question I raised. He said, I thought the same thing, and we don't have the answers. This is from the top person in the church. We have no answers. We have all the answers in Krishna consciousness, because we take to knowledge. Without knowledge, you cannot understand the nature of the soul and why we have to change one body after the other, because the soul is eternal. What do you do if you're eternal and the body lasts only a very short time, material body? If you take one body after another, there's no choice. Because you are eternal, you always have been, you always will be. So you have no force to take one body after another, because the body lasts for 100 years, that's it. And then the body falls apart, you know. I mean, even myself, I remember when I was young, now I look in the mirror and I say to myself, my God, what have you done with me? Because the body is getting older and older with all the different anxieties and sufferings that go along with it. So we have to understand there's knowledge of the soul which is actually freeing us from material bondage. Now, since we are talking about mundane religion, in generally Christians would think that Jesus died for our sins. We don't want to discuss this. I have my doubt. I have my doubt. Because everybody suffers his own doing. Now, even if you would take it to be true that you turn to Jesus, all sins are forgiven, what is the use of that? That's just ajñāna-saṁjñau, what is it? Then, what's the next step after associating with the devotees? Bhajanakriya, and then anatta-nivritti. That's just anatta-nivritti. From anatta-nivritti to bhava and prema is a long way. That's just halfway. So even if all your sins are forgiven, that's just one stage on our voyage back to Godhead, back to Krishna. It's just one stage. And so people get stuck there. They think, well, I'm free from sin. I can do what I like. Jesus died for my sin. And people can be so deluded. I've actually seen in a large meeting of young people, 40,000 young people, there was a tent and people were having a huge banner. Jesus, unless we sin, Jesus died for nothing. So we have to sin as much as possible. How can you be more deluded than to think like that? You see, we know that that's just, and so in that sense, liberation even, is just a stage. It's just a stage. It's not the ultimate. The ultimate goal of life, samsiti haritoshanam, is to give pleasure to Krishna and to have Krishna's mercy. Because ultimately everything is done by Krishna's mercy. That is the ultimate. To love Krishna. People may say, well, Jesus said, love your neighbor, you should love your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your strength. Yeah, that is true. Very true. He could say that because he was a self-realized soul. He knew that. But are we loving God? I'm far away from that. Even after now 50 years of practicing Krishna consciousness. There is some inkling there. But can we say we have the love of God? I mean, that's a very high stage. Once you have love for God, your material life is finished. You're beyond liberation. You're beyond bondage. You're on the transcendental platform. That's the point. That's why material bondage is illusion. Because a living entity has no real relationship with the material world. You don't have even a real relationship to the body, to your own body. Without the super soul, you can do nothing. Nothing. You cannot digest your food. You cannot anything. You can breathe without the super soul. So we are completely in Krishna's hand. And because of false ego, the conditioned soul identifies as matter. Therefore, so-called liberation is simply giving up an illusion rather than release from actual bondage. Or actually bondage is achieved when we are with Krishna. That's the point. So, and that's the essence of our philosophy, that we have to understand ultimately peace is only in God. Peace. There's no way to have peace. Gyatva mam shantim ricchati. One who knows me has peace, Krishna said. Otherwise, peace is not real unless we know Krishna. Happiness is only ultimately in Krishna. Knowledge is only in Krishna. You can go through all the qualities. It's only in Krishna. That's why if we do have Krishna, we are experiencing, as Prabhupada said, unlimited peace. Gyatva mam shantim ricchati. Bhaktiya, was it? Bhaktaram yagatapasam sarvalokameshwaram suridam sarvabhutanam gyatva mam shantim ricchati. One who understands that has peace. So peace can only be about when we turn to Krishna. There are no material solutions to our suffering in the material world. There are no solutions. Scientists invent one thing after the other and have completely be successful to totally destroy the environment and totally destroy the spiritual capacity of people. Completely destructive. Ultimately building the nuclear bombs, and this is just the beginning. They have not actually done anything for the progress of the soul in the material world. That's actually progress. It's not progressive to be perfect in material life. That's not progressive. Progressive is if we actually turn to God. That's progressive. Everything else is not progressive at all. You think you're winning, that's the material life. You think you're winning, but you're defeated by material energy at every moment. They don't see the inevitable destruction that is awaiting everybody. At the time of death, finally, that house of cards collapses. That false concept. People build like sand, castles in the sand. Children, they build castles in the sand at the beach. And then the tide rushes in and takes all those castles away. So whatever people have, this castle, this idea of themselves, that idea of themselves will all be completely abolished at the time of death. It is meaningless. Therefore the material world is illusion. It causes illusion, and it is illusion because if you look at a huge time span, say for example you sit here and something manifests itself in front of you and then it disappears. You say that's an illusion. It's not real. Right? So in the eyes of eternity, the material world is not real. Real is the pastimes of Krishna and Vrindavan. That's real. And we cannot see it because we are in material consciousness. But that's the reality actually. The reality is that Mahavishnu lies on the ocean and generates trillions of universes. That's the reality. But we can't see it. Even when we go to Mount Kailash, what do we see? A cold, uninhabitable mountain. That's what we see. Anybody who has been there. You can't even climb up there. People don't survive. But we know there's a huge banyan tree, 800 miles high, 800 miles wide. Lord Shiva sits there. Kumaras are there. Beautiful mountains, beautiful whole. We have no access to that actually reality. That's reality. Our relationship as a soul to the Supreme Soul, that is the reality. And there's actually, let me see if I can find it, there's a statement by Srila Haridas Thakur to that extent. Give me a second. So, here we go. Oh, don't tell me that. Aha. He says, one second. He says that in the whole universe, there are only two truths. Only two truths. Everything else is false. What is that truth? He says, there are only two meaningful truths, the jiva and the holy name. The soul is true, and the holy name is Krishna. That's true. And the relationship between the soul and Krishna, that's actually true. Everything else is just illusion. Think about that. What a radical statement that is. You explain this to a general person in the material world. There's only two truths. You say, my money, as far as I'm concerned, my money is the truth. My bank account. Every time I go home, my brother asks me this question, show me your bank account. I'm sorry, I can't service that. You know, how much money you have, how many houses you have, how many cars. It doesn't mean to me anything. But for people in the material world, it means everything. That's their truth. The money they have in the bank. Right? And so Haridas Thakur said, in the universe there are only two meaningful truths, the jiva and the holy name. Everything else is illusion. Think about that. Such a radical sentence. And therefore, the truth is, since he said the holy name is the ultimate truth, our relationship with Krishna, the holy name is our greatest treasure. That's our greatest treasure. We don't see that, we forget about that, but it's actually our greatest treasure we have in this material world. And japa is really the most important, topmost activity in the universe. Japa. The most. Prabhupada said actually that 90% of our progress in spiritual life depends on japa. That's what Prabhupada said. 90%, think about that. 90% depends on japa. And therefore, japa is the most important activity in the day. That we need good japa. Because with good japa, everything comes. When we are associating with Krishna, when we chant japa. Even if our chanting is not perfect, there's one sentence where, let me just find it here, where it's from Adi Purana. There's one, oops, let me go there. There's one, oh no. Aha. In Adi Purana, Lord Krishna says, "O Arjuna, please listen attentively. When a living entity chants my name, whether out of devotion or even indifference," his mind is everywhere. I mean, you're familiar with that, You start chanting, you want to concentrate, and then after some time, what pops into your head? Facebook, just one moment, Facebook. And you actually left the path already. Maya is always coming in so many ways, especially when we are chanting. Especially when we are chanting to take us away. Right? Because in this way Maya is protecting the purity of the holy name. You see, one time Prabhupada was asked this question, why is it that Lord Krishna is instructing Shiva to come into this world to spread Mayavadi philosophy? Good question. Why does Krishna do that? And Prabhupada gave the perfect answer. He said, Mayavadi philosophy is necessary to protect the purity of devotional service. It's like a trap. That's what Prabhupada said. It's the last snare of Maya. It's a trap. If you want to come to the king, he has many traps to trap you. Maybe money, maybe women, maybe fame. These are all traps, right? That's why Lord Chaitanya says, Nadanam najanam sundarim. I don't care for these traps. They're traps. The Mayavadi philosophy is a trap. If you want to become one with God, if you have this desire, there you go. There's a philosophy for it. If you want to worship God and eat meat, well, there's religion there. There's mundane religion. It's exactly for that, to trap all those people who have this desire to eat meat while worshipping God. You become a Christian, for example. So these are traps, nothing but traps. And so Maya is always trapping the living entity. Like you come to the door of Krishna, there's a doorman there. He said, I want to see Krishna. He said, yes, you can see Krishna, but look at this. And the doorman produces some Maya, and you run away. Another one, another type of Maya. Maya is producing these different kind of traps to protect Krishna's the purity of devotional service, basically speaking. That's why there's Mayavadi philosophy. That's why all religion in this world is God-inspired. God-inspired. Not a blade of grass moves without God's sanction. That's why you have mundane religion. There's a necessity for it. To uplift people who are deeply materialistic. They may be even meat eaters, but still they can pray. And in this way, like Krishna says, O Arjuna, please listen attentively when the living entity chants my name, whether out of devotion or indifference. I never forget this act. It remains very close to my heart. And then Krishna says, there's this verse, let me just see. He says, there's no vow like chanting my holy name. No knowledge superior to it, no meditation which comes anywhere near it, and it gives the highest result. No tapasya is equal to it, and nothing is as potent and as powerful as the holy name. Chanting Krishna's name is the greatest act of piety, the supreme refuge. Even the words of the Vedas do not possess sufficient power to describe its magnitude. Chanting is the highest path to liberation, peace, and eternal life. It is the pinnacle of devotion, the heart's joyous proclivity and attraction, the best form of remembrance of Supreme Lord. Then it says, the holy name has appeared only for the benefit of the living entities in this world, their supreme worshipful object and their spiritual guide and mentor. Whoever continuously chants God's name even in his sleep, can realize that the name and God is the same. You see, people may perform in the name of religion huge tapasya. If you go down the Prikram path here, behind the house, and there's a Bhaktivedanta hospital. Everybody knows Bhaktivedanta hospital? And then little later, you have to go to the right. Why don't you go to the left? You come into a little village. There's a mountain in this village. And on top, there is a temple for Sabari Muni. That's Muni who was meditating underwater for 1,000 years. He's worshipped there. You can go there. It's not far away. And he sits there with a long beard. So what was his problem? 1,000 years underwater. Well, he did not know that the seeds of his karma are still there. No amount of tapasya can kill the seeds. And so as soon as he saw two fishes underwater, having sexual whatever, he became agitated because the seeds were there. That's the point. And the holy name destroys the seeds. That's the point. That's the point. Even the seeds are destroyed by chanting Hare Krishna. We can learn from Sabari Muni a very important lesson. The seeds are destroyed because otherwise these seeds will fructify in due course of time. It's just a matter of time the seeds come out. That's why the chanting of the holy name is such a high principle, the highest principle in spiritual life, to destroy the seeds. And you come gradually to Krishna. All material problems are taken care of if you come to Krishna. Krishna Suya Samaya Handaka. Wherever Krishna, there's no darkness. And the verse I quoted it the other day in a lecture of somebody else, where Krishna says, if you direct your consciousness towards me, machita, your consciousness, machita, to me, machita, then sarva durgani, all difficulties that are created by Maya in terms of adhyatmika suffering, adidevika suffering, adibodhika suffering, any type of suffering, mat prasadam, by my mercy, will be destroyed. There you have it. That's why it's the most intelligent thing to do, is to chant Hare Krishna. People may be very advanced in knowledge, but what is the use of that? Prabhupada said one time, he said that most people in this world are materially and spiritually incapable. Most people. On one Brahmana, Prabhupada says 9 Kshatriyas are born, 90 Vaishyas are born, 900 Shudras are born. That's the key to understand there's only one person in knowledge. Right? And so he said most people are materially and spiritually, and that's why people work in factories or they work on the street, because they're incapable. And then Prabhupada said some people, they're materially capable, they're the top cream of society, but spiritually still incapable. And then Prabhupada said, and there are very few, they are materially incapable, but spiritually capable. And Prabhupada smiled and said, that's ISKCON. Materially not very capable, but spiritually very capable. And then Prabhupada said, then there are some who are materially and spiritually capable. They're very rare. They're very rare that somebody is materially and spiritually capable. Like Prabhupada, classical example, he knew everything, he knew how to do things, practically everything. You know, he knew how to buy a property, for example. When he bought this temple in Detroit, I mean, he negotiated, and something like 10 times he walked out of the negotiation. And the Prabhupada said, one minute. And Prabhupada drove him, practically speaking, to a point of nervous breakdown that he called him in the middle of the night at 1 o'clock. He said, now I'm ready. Till he got an extremely good price for Krishna. You know, so he's materially and spiritually capable. Right? And so when we come to this chanting process, then yes, we come to a platform of pure love of Krishna. Machita sarva durgani, if you direct your consciousness towards me, the highest and most direct way to direct our consciousness towards Krishna is chanting. Because you're calling Krishna's name. Krishna is not different from his name. You immediately associate with him on the most intense platform possible. And by association, everything goes. Prabhupada gives the example like iron becomes red hot by putting it into fire. So even if somebody is negligent, even then Krishna cannot forget that somebody chants his holy name. So we are very fortunate that we came to Krishna consciousness. What's the time? We came to Krishna conscious movement and have gotten this mercy from Srila Prabhupada. In fact, I asked Srila Prabhupada this personal question one time on a morning walk here in Vrindavan. I was translating Bhagavad-Gita into German language. This is now in 1973 or something. And we were walking and I asked Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada, I read one verse in Bhagavad-Gita from Bhagavatam. And it says that one who chants the holy name, he has taken bath in all the holy rivers of India. He went to all the holy places of India. Does it mean that in my last life I was an Indian? This is an obvious conclusion. And Prabhupada smiled and said, actually, he said, I created your good fortune. And that's important because you see, Bhagavatam is written 3,000 years ago, 4,000 years, 5,000. At that stage, to come to actually to the chanting of the holy name of God, yes, you have to do all the tapasya. You have to bathe in all the holy rivers of India and visit all the places of pilgrimage. But Lord Chaitanya came and he broke that storehouse of love of God open for everybody. And therefore anybody, even from the west or from the east, it doesn't matter. If he takes to Srila Prabhupada's teachings, yes, that is the mercy of Lord Chaitanya that is coming through his perfect representative. That's why Prabhupada, yes, he created my good fortune, he created your good fortune, he created everybody's good fortune. Without Srila Prabhupada's mercy, we would not be anywhere here, none of us. Not because of great spiritual qualification, because he created the mercy, our spiritual life. Practically speaking, because he's a missionary of Lord Chaitanya. So we have to understand this. I want to read to you one thing more that I very like to hear. Where is it here? The problem is if you are looking for it, then you don't find it. Here it is. So, Bhaktivinoda Thakur tells us, as far as chanting is concerned, he says to you and he says to me, your mind is wandering all over the universe when you chant Hare Krishna. Is that true? Lift up your hand for who that is true. See, everybody, you can lift up your hand, I don't believe it. You may hide your hand under your chadar. Come on, Then he says, chant anyway. Your mind is wandering to the past and future when you chant. Is that familiar to you? Chant anyway. Then he says, you're not able to concentrate on Krishna's name while you chant. Chant anyway. You have no taste for chanting. Chant anyway. You have lusty desires. Chant anyway. You're making offenses in chanting. Chant anyway. You chant late at night. Chant anyway. You're not praying to Krishna. Here's the point. You're not praying to Krishna to help you to chant better. We have to pray to Krishna. Because it's not in our capability. Haridas Thakur says this very, 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 very clearly here. Let me just find it. He says that simply by one's own endeavor, no one in this world can overcome distractiveness. No one in this world, by own endeavors. Such victory can only come about by your merciful blessings, by Krishna's blessings. Therefore, it is absolutely necessary to beg for that grace. Absolutely necessary, not by own endeavor. Endeavor must be there. We have to do our work and then Krishna will help us. It's not just a matter of surrender, we also have to do something. Practically, there was one time Prabhupada in Boston, he received a photo of a beautiful decoration of the altar in Boston. And he called them on the phone, he said, how did you manage? How did you get so much money? And they said, Srila Prabhupada, we don't have money. We just used whatever money we had left to buy flowers, to decorate the altar, and now Krishna has to take care of us. And when Prabhupada said, your idea to depend on Krishna is nice, but you also have to do something, and then Krishna will help you. That's the point. You also have to do something, and then Krishna will help you. So the clock rings, the bell rings. We're coming to the end of the class. I thank you so much for being patient. Do you have any questions?
We don't have love for Krishna, but we just chant Hare Krishna.
Yeah.
So what is the difference then? How that we can be free from all this material entanglement?
Well, by chanting Krishna's name, we are invoking Krishna's mercy on us. It's the way Lord Chaitanya gave this process. By chanting, we become purified. Even the seeds of sinful desires are destroyed. And so simply by this association with Krishna, we gradually develop our love for him. Because Krishna revealed himself. According he surrenders unto me, I reveal myself, I reward him. So there's a process there that if you turn to Krishna, it will not for nothing. He will respond to that in due course of time. That's the point. As far as knowledge is concerned, well, Jiva Goswami points out there's three types of knowledge. One is pratyaksha, and it means direct perception that the sun is out, the sun is warm, I can feel the sun, I have direct perception of the sun, I see the sun as being red in the morning, white at noon, and red in the evening. These are all perceptions of the sun. But then there's anumana, that means by research. We know, for example, that the sun is so many diameters across, and all the scientific knowledge is... and still, that does not reveal the sun, because the sun ultimately is a living being. There's the sun god, Vivasvan, is living in the sun. That we cannot experience, that we have to hear from Shastra. So pratyaksha, direct perception, does not work to come to truth. Nor by mental speculation, by mundane research we come to truth. Only by Brahma, Sapta Brahma. Now, if you look at Bhagavad-Gita, interestingly enough, there's this verse, Raja Vidya Raja Guyam, that this is the king of knowledge, the greatest secret, Raja Guyam, Pavitam Idam Uttamam, is the highest and pavitam of cleanliness, of purity. Then he says, Pratyaksha avagamam damyam, it gives direct perception of the self. So there is direct perception of the self. It's not mundane pratyaksha. That in due course of time, we get that direct perception of the self and the Supreme Self by the process of devotional service. That's why it's, how to do that? Raja Vidya Raja Guyam. Pratyaksha avagamam damyam susukam kartum avayam. We come to the platform of real happiness, of real pleasure. The pleasure in the material world is temporary. It is no comparison to the happiness that can be achieved by a human being in his relationship with Krishna. Yeah? Any other question? Sit down.
So, Prabhuji, you mentioned about endeavor and mercy. So, someone may endeavor to chant his rounds nicely, but is it possible that Krishna may not have mercy on him? That is one. And someone, because mercy is unconditional, right? Mercy is very unconditional. It doesn't really depends upon our endeavor. Because Krishna can give mercy to anyone. So how do you understand this? Because someone tried to endeavor to chant nice rounds, Krishna will still not show his mercy. So how do you take it up? How do you understand this?
Well, who can understand the mind of God? Nobody can understand. Krishna's mercy is causeless. He can give it or not give it. But our endeavor is important. Without our endeavor, we don't qualify for Krishna's causeless mercy. You know what I mean? It goes both. It takes two to tango, as they say, you know. You have to do your part and then Krishna will do the rest. We have to do our best. My godbrother said, Satchidananda Swami, we have to do our best and Krishna will do the rest. In a very simple formula, you know, and very perfect. We have to do the best, Krishna will do the rest. We have to endeavor to chant. It's not that by our endeavor we can force Krishna, but that's the prerogative. That's the first step. And then Krishna will, like he says, I cannot forget in Adi Purana that somebody chants my name, even unattentively. Krishna cannot forget. Imagine that. He remembers that. That's the beginning of our spiritual life, that somebody actually chants the holy name. You know? And so we are very fortunate. We are here in a place where to chant is more easier than in other parts of the world. You know, this is the highest place you can go in the material world. It is Vrindavan and Mayapur, basically speaking. And so how are you not fortunate you are here? And I'm, as a European body, how I'm not fortunate. I just got an X2 visa. 5 years, multiple, and I can extend it in the FRO in Mathura for another 5 years, another 5 years. How we are not fortunate like that, you know, that we can sit in this temple. You know, let me ask you a question, your friends from kindergarten, where are they? You had friends in kindergarten? You remember? I remember some. Primary school, I remember, even the names. Then, what's the secondary school? I remember the names. Then there's university, I remember all these names, and all these people that I've been in contact with. Where is everybody? Not one is sitting in this temple, not one. Right? It's just like you have this tree there. You see this tree. Many ants climb up this tree. And in this tree, on the top branch, there's one mango. So there is a split. Half the people go this way, the other half there. And again a split. Half the people go this way, half it. And in this way you see in your own life, so all these people, they go this way, that way, that way. And then finally you come to this one branch, after being led by the super soul to always make the right decisions. You come to this branch and there it is a mango. It's right in front of us. Now we have to grab it, and that we do by chanting Hare Krishna, serving Srila Prabhupada, you know. Very fortunate. Hardly anybody here. You know, of my friends, I know only one person who made it to the Krishna conscious movement from the past. You know, I was in school with him and then he fell away, you know. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, 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 Hare. Once more. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.